You've dived in volcanic lakes at high altitudes to study the creatures within. Can you tell me the technical, the fun, the human story of that effort?
The image that is associated with a scientist is the person with the white coat in the lab. In fact, a number of us at the Institute are athletes doing what would be considered extreme stuff. And not, I mean, it's fun. It's a little dangerous too, but it's to get data and more knowledge. So there are so many stories. I don't even know.
What was the first time you did a dangerous thing with a volcano?
So the first one associated to the search for life, understanding, was in 2002, where I started climbing those high volcanoes in the Andes that are 20,000 footers. The view out there is just beautiful.
You got... You're so hilarious at spending almost no time on some epic things. I love this. Okay, what the volcano? Okay, how tall are these volcanoes? What are you doing with a volcano? What's required to prepare for that? What does a mission look like? I mean, that is true that this is science embodied. It's like athletics and it's science, and you're studying the extreme conditions of life on Earth, extreme beauty of life on Earth in those conditions. So what are we talking about with this volcano? How big is it?
Remember when we were talking about how do I understand how I search for life on Mars? This is how it started for me. And then I looked at environment in my head, started, going through the environments on Earth that would be good analogs. And then you only have a few. And the Andes, in that case, are some of the best in the world, just because of the aridity of the place. And the higher you go, the least atmosphere you have, the more UV radiation you have. And the Andes are volcanic, hydrothermal, plus you have the climate change that's coming, you have evaporation. It's a picture of Mars 3.5 billion years ago. And so now you are actually entering a time machine, basically. So remember, I'm a diver. And the first time I got in 2002 to the places we wanted to explore, all of a sudden I was standing at 14,000 feet, looking at 20,000 feet and saying, okay, well, I need to get up there.
Were you scared?
No, because we are prepared. And the only thing I didn't know is if I was going to be able to make it to the top, because now you're dealing with high altitude. You can deal with high altitude sickness. You can deal with a number of things. And for God's sake, these are volcanoes and they are dormant. They are not extinct. That can bite us a couple of times.
What was your preparation for that kind of thing? I mean,
there is a lot of, hiking and trekking at high altitude around here, but not so high because we don't have anything closer to those elevations around here in the US. But in volcanic environment, climbing volcanoes here, we have plenty of those. Diving as well. I am a free diver. So this is where it's going to be hilarious, because I started with a completely irrational fear of pressurized vessels that comes from an incident in my childhood. And so I became a free diver to avoid having to carry oxygen tanks on my back.
Free diving is diving without
anything, just your lungs, right?
That started from childhood.
Yeah, no, it was to the point where when I saw a pressurized vessel like a methane tanks or anything, I would be, going around and put a lot of distance between me and that tank. Yes. So I was not going to carry any oxygen tank. And the first time I actually dived at the summit of that lake was free diving. People look at me like I'm nuts. Well, maybe I am a little bit.
People that work with you as well? I mean, that kind of seems kind of nuts.
No, it's
a risk.
Actually, it's a lot less of a risk than getting with conventional air. And I can explain that. But ultimately, what decided me to certify scuba and go over my fear was that as a scientist, I needed more time at the bottom of the lake to sample, rationally, take my time to think. And I can stay quite long enough as a freediver underwater. But the last thing you want to do at 20,000 feet is to come up at the surface with empty lungs, because there is not much you can breathe out there to replenish your oxygen. So definitely your time in the water is cut short just for safety. And I realized that it was not a good trade-off for me at some point. So I certified scuba, and after 3 years of exploring that lake, free diving, we finally came up with a full scuba diving expedition, but we were diving with rebreathers, which means that we dived with pure oxygen. So rebreathers give you a bag with stuff that looks like cat litters in it, which is basically to absorb the CO2 that you are expelling when you're breathing, and they're recycling oxygen this way. So basically, you are rebreathing your own respiration.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long can you do that? So what's interesting about that technology?
So it's very interesting because then that completely avoids the potential issues you may have with the binds. When you are diving, the risk of bubbles trapped in your lungs because of different pressures and different gases.
Oh, so there's a complexity to the flow of oxygen underwater.
When you are breathing regular air, when you are scuba diving here, you know that you have to do some different, when you're coming back, when you are diving deep and you have conventional air, then you need to stop so that you can equalize the gases in your lungs. If you come back too fast, then you can have air bubbles stuck, and then you can risk the binds, which you can risk to be paralyzed. You can risk a number of nasty issues. And we wanted absolutely to avoid that. So diving with pure oxygen avoids this completely. And it has another benefit at high altitude is that, well, the greater risk when you are at high altitude is altitude sickness. What is altitude sickness? Is just you not having enough oxygen in your blood. So this was a good benefit. It was a good trade-off. We were lucky enough to be also trained by the military. So we came up with not the civilian rebreather, which is the big thing on the back that you carry on your back. We actually were given Navy SEALs commando rebreathers.
You worked with Navy SEALs for this?
The director of military operations. Yes, we were trained. We were trained like astronauts for 3 months. Yeah. I spent more time. I had a joke that if somebody wanted to reach me, they better put a phone line at the bottom of the swimming pool, because this is where I was. So we trained, and our manual about the safety was about that thick. So it was a real operation. That was 3 years into it, because when you are free diving in the years prior, there is no risk. You don't have any other gas in your lung than what you are breathing. The only risk is come short of air, and then you're in trouble, which happened to me one time, seriously. So
tell me about that time. I got to ask you about free diving before we return to the rebreathers.
Well, all these lakes I had altitude, they are cold. They are the minimum temperature that you can have on bodies of water, clear bodies of water, which is 4 degrees C. It's very, very cold. And so you cannot...
It's like an ice bath.
Somewhat, yeah. So you cannot just dive with a wetsuit. So the idea was to take a dry suit. And I learned how to free dive with a dry suit, which is really the worst thing you can do.
What's a wetsuit? What's a dry suit?
So a dry suit, a wetsuit is usually what you use in the ocean when it's not too cold. You can use also dry suit. But the wetsuit basically is going to keep you warm, because water is getting into the suit, and at the contact of your skin is getting to body temperature. Mm-hmm. And so for a while you can, dive like that. And in the ocean here, that's fine. That's fine. The dry suit is the opposite. It's completely closed, which means that you don't have any contact with the water outside, and you keep your warmth through your body temperature and even clothing that you can put into it. So these dry suit, they are used by divers who go really deep in very cold water and need to stay a long time underwater.
So what's the bad part?
The bad part is that when you have those dry suit, you have a lot of air that can be trapped in it. Usually we do what we call burping the suit. It's not very pleasant expression, but you get in the water, and as soon as you get in the water, you can see the air pockets all over the place, right? So you burp the suit, you open the valve, and the air comes out. Once you have done that, then you look with your lead belt, and you know when you're ready to go down. And so what happened that day is that I actually did burp the suit, but didn't realize I burped it completely. And so I went down, and immediately I felt an air pocket going to my legs. So basically, air was trapped in the suit and went on my legs as I was diving like that. And so I didn't pay too much attention to that.
Because you're diving down?
Yeah, I was diving down. And so didn't pay too much attention about that as I was, busy, just an awkward position. But then I wanted to turn and go up. Well, no can do. I was just like a buoy.
Oh, wow.
And I was like that. So the first time I say, okay, I try a second time and a third time. And by the fourth time, I kind of realized I was in trouble. And the fifth time I say, okay, now you better give it your best try. Otherwise, it's going to be big trouble.
So this is free diving?
I was free diving.
And then you can't.
And I cannot
What
turn
were you
around.
feeling? I mean, is there a panic or no?
No, there is no panic because you can't. You cannot afford to be panicking. In fact, you are always thinking, because there is training. And this is the best part about training. Your training allows you that space to keep you cool and composed, which you need to be in that kind of situation. And so finally, after the fifth time, I was able to rectify the position and get myself up. But when I got up, my lungs were empty. I had been in the water for quite some time. And I knew what was going to happen. So I decided to just be the plank, not move and don't do anything, just open my mouth and try to suck oxygen. But obviously oxygen at 6,000 meters, 20,000 feet, there is not that much. It's about it's 48% of what you breathe at sea level. So although it was noon at that time, the sky stayed pretty dark and starry for about a minute or two.
Everywhere.
Oh my God, yes.
The
funny thing was,
and that's the first time you experienced that kind of. I mean, can you possibly train for that? Like, because can you also pass out?
Oh, you could. I mean, the fact that I was already seeing dark was a real sign that my brain was starved of oxygen. And I had one of my friends or colleagues on the shore just telling me, because I'd been under for a little while, and say, "Is everything okay?" And I remember trying to say something,
and nothing.
And I was just like, that's, I think, the best lie I ever. I gave the thumb up.
You were lying to the friend and maybe to yourself?
No, because I knew I was going to be okay, but it took me to be still for a few minutes.
Well, can you talk about free diving? I mean, what's the technical skill involved here? It just seems exceptionally difficult. Like for most people that swim, you go underwater, it's hard. So what's the skill there?
I think you probably can get good or better at free diving by training. So you have different techniques. You can train in swimming pool, and you can say, frankly, for me, I go at the bottom of the swimming pool and I sit there. And then you have relaxation techniques. Some people meditate. I can't. I am not a good person that can meditate, or if I do, I don't know about it. But my way of doing things and taking my mind off the situation I'm in is by singing in my head. I love music or hearing music. And in fact, knowing the kind of song I'm singing, I know about the length of time that I'm staying underwater as well. So this is how, so this is my own way. People have different ways.
What kind of music are we talking about?
All sorts of music. Can be classical, can be pop music, just songs. When you really know that you are relaxed And something I experienced actually at 20,000 feet, which was the greatest experience of my life in those terms, is when you forget that you have water around you. At that point, you cannot tell whether you are the water or water is you. There is actually no separation anymore. And I felt that when I was training in the swimming pool. I never could have imagined that I would feel that way once on top of that volcano. And it happened. And it was absolutely amazing. It was, we were talking about how life consciousness permeates the universe.
Mhm.
At that point in time, on that volcano, that day, it took me by surprise. I was not expecting it. Everything around me, the lake was Arctic blue
Mhm.
with all the ray of the suns. You could tell them apart, every single one of
Mhm.
them. I was surrounded by golden darts. And it was the most incredible experience. And I don't know if it's that kind of environment that led me to just, go into whatever state of meditation or whatnot. But all of a sudden, there was no separation anymore between me, the water, the volcano. And if I came with questions, they didn't matter anymore because for that fraction of a second, it seemed that I had all the answers in the universe.
Was it the connectedness with everything? Is what it,
You can call it that way. I still don't know what it means,
Yes.
literally, but it is that moment where you feel that it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter anymore. It was a absolute peace, absolute understanding, and it was incredible. It was an absolute awareness.
Could you describe it as beautiful?
That could go beyond that. I think that there is clearly in my mind today no words that can express how perfect this was.
Does that start to speak to why you love diving, or is there something special about that place, diving at such elevations in volcanoes?
I started diving pretty much. This is the first thing I did when I was near water. In fact, there is a very fun little incident with my parents, me being on the shore of a lake on vacation. I was 3 years old, maybe. And I had these little lifesavers, on my arms, and my parents were not watching. And in my little brain, I still can remember today saying, well, nothing bad can happen to me. I cannot drown if I go underwater. See, that's the logic of a 3-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah.
It kind of works. I mean, that's
Yeah, well,
pretty brilliant.
So I removed the lifesavers that I had and I just went in the water. My mom said before she could do anything, I was under. And it was like a natural thing. And for me, I felt immediately at home. And as little as I was, completely. And it goes beyond that. This sense of connectedness or oneness or whatever, I always felt good and underwater. So it doesn't matter really if it's 20,000 feet. The thing that's matter at that point is that you need to get there. So you need to get with all the gears, with your hiking, trekking equipment, high mountaineering gears. And when you get on top of that, you have to remove all that and don a suit.
Is there something you can speak to the challenging aspects of that process? Or is it just like this rigorous process that's well designed that you have to go through and you don't think one step at a time?
This is where most of the risk is, because you can be well prepared, but for one reason or another, you get sick, and you can get sick not only because of high altitude sickness, it can be a number of things, or you can be tired, or you can catch a cold. And then, of course, you have the mountain itself. We had a magnitude 7.8 earthquake hitting one day when we were 50 meters away from the summit.
So you can't obviously plan for that.
No, you can't. And that's the acts of God. Working with NASA, although I am the director of the SETI Institute, my grants are coming from NASA. So I'm a NASA contractor. And every time we go to those environments, we have to go through the rigorous process of training with NASA and checking all the boxes for safety. So they are training and training and training us. And I have to thank them, because a lot of those trainings are the things that are in your brain when these kind of things happen, you know how to react and you are not freaking out. But in all of the things they are training us for, you have the green risk, the yellow risk, and the red risk. So the green risks are basically the don't be stupid and don't do the kind of thing you wouldn't be doing at home, like it's jumping, on rocks that are not stable. You can tweak your ankle, And then you have other risks like high altitude sickness, how you prepare for that, how you recognize that. These are the yellow risks. And then the red risk. The red risks are what they call the acts of gods, the kind of thing that they can happen. There is nothing you can do about it, and then you accept that when you do that. So those are volcanic eruptions when you're in this kind of environment, earthquakes, and and avalanches, for instance.
So you're on this giant mountain and it's shaking.
No, it's not shaking. That's the interesting part of it. There was a whole background of things that happened that day when we started off. But we got to 50 meters from the summit. And I have part of my logistics team that is at the foot of the mountain. And being so close to the summit, we have to go under an overhang of lava. So it's just like we are just under this big vault of lava. And it's actually beautiful. If you want something beautiful, it's the Altiplano seen from 20,000 feet. It's just absolutely stunning.
What's the colors? What are we looking at?
The colors are that of early Earth, which means primordial Earth. It's ochres, yellows, oranges, browns, with a dark blue sky. And so you're just, it's a time machine. You're just out there and you're climbing 42-degree slopes. So all of a sudden, I'm right next behind the guide. And the guide has been with us, it's family, we've been together for 10 years. And he's starting to do that. I don't discuss. When Macario do that, I listen and I ask the team to do the same thing. We're maybe half a dozen. And then I went to talk to him and say, what's going on? He's on the radio. And then he gives me the radio. I'm talking to my logistic chief officer who was at the bottom. And he said, we're having a tremendous earthquake. He was saying that actually the ground was waving. It was so bad. And he was freaking out because he said, everything is avalanching. And I'm very puzzled because we are in a very dangerous part of the volcano. Nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. I turned around. And then this is when I realized there is dust absolutely everywhere. Everything that I saw 2 minutes before, it's gone, just disappear into a wall of dust. But nothing's happening where we are. And our friends down, they were freaking out because they were seeing everything avalanching, and especially the other side of the mountain we were on was avalanching.
So they have no visuals.
They have no visual. They thought that we are caught in the avalanching. So I said, no, but so at that point I said.
They thought you were screwed.
Yeah. And I said, okay, so if this is what's happening, then I'm taking everybody to the summit because we have a very large crater that will take care of avalanching, we'll be safe. And I'm waiting for the aftershock because this is what you do, when you have earthquakes. So here we go, taking everybody in the crater. And now you have half a dozen scientists in the crater with the crater lake. And this is why we came for. So we just had a 7.8 earthquake. And what do you think they do? Well, of course, they do the science they came to do. So the only thing is that I couldn't because my radio was only working when I was on the rim of the crater. But I had a little assistant with me, a young Bolivian teenager. He had been shadowing me for 3 weeks, so he knew exactly what to do. And he said, Nathalie, no problem. Give me your bags. I'll do the sampling for you. So I was monitoring the situation. And
were you scared?
I wasn't at that point. And there was another moment. My friend downstairs, I could,
at the foot.
At the foot, yeah. We've known each other. As I said, we're family. This team is family. We've known each other. I am the godmother of kids. So we are close. And I could feel for the first time in my life that he actually was scared. And he was calling me every 30 seconds, telling me stuff. I said, you have to stop this now. Just call me to give me information that is useful for me to make decisions. And so I say, okay, what's going on? All right. He tells me, there is still avalanching, etc. And then a few minutes later, he calls me and say, I think that Lascar is erupting. So now I have to tell you, we are on a volcano. The next volcano, we share a slope with it. Is a little lower, but that's the most temperamental volcano of the entire chain. And this one has a history of eruption. And then my friend is telling me that the volcano seems to be starting to erupt. If that volcano goes off, we have nowhere to go. That got my attention. So if you say scared, I would say that I got the realization that what that meant. I went cold for like a fraction of a second, but that meant that just my adrenaline started to kick in. And it was a very, very strange experience because now you have tunnel vision. It's about survival. And I say, okay, now you are going to tell me what I need to know. Tell me, what do you see? Say, I see smoke. Say, what kind of smoke? He say, it's white. I say, no big deal. That's water vapor. Okay. Where is going? It's going to Argentina. That was the opposite direction of where we are. I said, okay, I'm staying where I am because right now there is no danger. And there was still the issue of the aftershock. I didn't want to have the team caught in the central gully of the volcano with an avalanche coming at us. So we stayed there. And he called me after that and say, well, it's still going to Argentina. Fine. Okay. And then a little later, he calls me and say, Nathalie, things are changing here. I say, okay, what's going on? I say, well, the cloud is a little yellow. And I was thinking myself, shit.
What does it mean when it's yellow?
Sulfur. And then when you have sulfur mixed with the water vapor or the water in your lungs, this turns into sulfuric acid. Then you're really screwed. And I say, okay, where?
Thank you for the information.
Where is the cloud going? He said, the wing is shifting. It's coming your direction. Oh, no. So yeah, that was a day like that, And I am talking to him on the radio and I'm turning around. And as I turn around, I see the cloud starting to pop on the opposite side of the rim, So at that time, we had no choice anymore because now you have to figure out what's going to kill you first. And so there was the risk or the potential of an avalanche. But at least you can see the rocks. The gas is going to kill you before you can see it. Yeah. So I called everybody back. We gathered our stuff. I didn't give too much detail, but I said it's time to go downhill and fast. So, which we did. We stopped only when we were at mid-camp. And then at that point, we saw the cloud just completely covering the summit where we were. So we did well to bail out. Wow. But that was 500 meter higher than we were. So we were safe. I was just making sure that it would not go down the slope where we were safe. So we stayed and, just rested for a little while. And after that, we descended. And it was all on adrenaline. I can tell you what, I had two of my crew with headaches. One of them was because of the altitude. We climbed really fast. The other one was because of the cloud. She was the closest to the cloud when it happened. So we descended fast.
Wow, that was close.
That was close. And it's interesting how the human body and mind works, because I know that from the moment my friend told me that the volcano seemed to be erupting, I was going on adrenaline. But when we got close to them and I saw him, we were getting close to the cars, I saw him coming towards me. And the slope, all of a sudden, all the adrenaline went away. I was a mess. I had to find the first rock and sit down. Yeah. It was gone.
That's fascinating. So you just basically physically and mentally collapsed once
Absolutely.
you saw. So
there was nothing left of me. I got in the car. And I felt in the car as we were heading back towards camp, I could have passed out. I really fought back. And I'm not the kind of passing out really, easy. But there was nothing left. I had no energy, no nothing. It's fabulous how you react and how this is embedded in your brain from eons of evolution, of reaction to a dangerous situation, basically.
The drive to survive.
Yeah, something like that.